Money Radio, discussing the business of making and spending money.
Hello, viewers out there. Welcome to another edition of Energy Focus on Money Radio. It's reaching you on Leadership Television. My name is Winifred Ugbebo, your host on the program. And of course, as usual on the program, we have an in-house analyst. She's also the group business editor of Leadership Newspapers, Inse Anthony Uko.
Thank you.
It's a good pleasure to have you on the program. How's your week been?
It's been lovely.
And how have you coped with the fuel subsidy and its attendant effects?
In fact, I'm just returning from the Nigerian Oil and Gas Energy Week, and the resonating discussion at that conference has been how to manage the current situation that Nigeria has found itself in.
Okay,
yep.
You're welcome back. Perhaps
Thank
we want
you.
to share some of the snippets there during the energy, oil and gas sector week you just had.
Okay.
So what was the deliberation at the end of the day?
Yeah, one key takeout from the oil and gas conference, the NOG, for this year is that gas for Nigeria is not just a destination, a transition fuel like we were made to understand before now. It is more or less fast becoming a destination fuel.
Okay.
So now the whole attention has moved away from stopping the use of our gas, but into developing much more means by which we can harness the potential of gas. And then not just harnessing the potential of gas, in the process reducing the level of carbon emission in line with the net zero carbon emission transition that is going on globally. So the attention now is not for us to jettison the use of our Nigeria's vast natural resources, but to find better ways through technology in producing cleaner versions of this gas that we can still utilize and meet the demands of the Western world.
Yeah, thank you so much. Perhaps you are going to be sharing more as the program goes on. We are going to be looking at today's topic, which is on IPMAN's proposed loan and impact on fuel pricing. IPMAN's proposed loan and impact on fuel pricing. IPMAN is the Independent Petrol Marketers Association of Nigeria. They recently announced that they are getting a loan to build gas dispensing stations. Perhaps it's in line with that the oil and gas week that you just had. They are talking from.
Yes, with the Nigeria removing fuel subsidy on petrol, which is one of the largest fuel energy used by Nigerians, especially motorists. Nigeria has been facing the heat of it. Many people didn't think it was going to be this adverse. In fact, for now, what Nigeria has been experiencing in the past years was fuel scarcity, where queues will be long at filling stations, not being able to have enough supply. But what we are seeing these days is that there's fuel in virtually all the filling stations, but we have fewer cars because the cost of petrol is really high. And when you're looking at it, a lot of motorists are seeing that it's more advantageous for them to drop their vehicles and go use the public transport system.
And you just mentioned that there are now fewer cars in filling stations to buy fuel. Not just in filling stations, even cars on the road as well.
Of course, it's when they buy fuel that they will be able to go to
now
drive
this
their cars to places.
Proposal for loan. What does it portend for Nigerians?
Yeah, that right now, Nigeria has been the fuel of use has been largely petrol. So most of the filling stations that we have in the country are still stations that dispense petrol. And even as Nigeria is drumming up the wider use of gas within the country, you find
Mm,
out that most filling stations don't have the dispensing facilities for that.
mm,
So IPMAN now is at the forefront of ensuring that there are more gas dispensing stations across the
okay.
country. So it's been in in a discussion with the African Development Bank to secure a revolving loan whereby its members will be able to change some of their dispensing stations to to gas, while others will be cohabiting, will be having co-locating both gas and petrol for the issue of convenience, as the case may be. And the huge financial outlay for this has
Mm,
means it has been very somehow difficult for the
mm.
marketers to be able to do that on their own without resorting to loans. And so this is a welcome development because now a lot more of them will be able to access loans and convert some of their filling uh, out stations to gas.
Okay. No, but if they are able to do that, don't you think that it's going to be a long-term impact? We are looking at short-term impact. How does that come into being? And also given the fact that you say that about 90%, if not 95% of cars in Nigeria are still using petrol.
Yeah, well, for the one thing we just have to look at is if we begin to talk about gas,
Mm,
how many places are there that you can refill this?
mm,
That has been a disincentive
yes.
for many motorists to convert before now. And
Mm,
at that point, I would also say that the need for them to do that conversion was not as high
as now.
as now, where the price of petrol is rather on the high side. However, be that as it may, even if many Nigerians take to converting their vehicles to gas, their vehicle engines to
Mm,
gas, the first priority will be where will I refill?
mm,
How will I be able to top up my engine so that the I don't get grounded? So that is, even if it's not going to have an immediate impact, the first point to begin this journey of ensuring wider use of gas will be ensuring that the refilling stations are actually more readily accessible
mm.
than it is
Okay.
currently.
Okay. Now, talking about fuel subsidy, yesterday the president went to the National Assembly to demand for 500 billion naira loan. Sorry, I said loan palliative to help cushion the impact of subsidy removal. How, in your view, should these funds be dispensed? Why some report claim that okay, they are going to do the uh, transferring money to well, some Nigerians that are living below poverty level. But many share the opinion that no, this has failed in the past. So, what, in your view, should be done for this palliative to go around?
Yeah, you're actually right when you say that it's a loan. The
Okay, it's a
president is
loan.
seeking
Okay,
approval for a
mm,
500
billion
billion
naira.
naira loan,
Okay.
which it intends to use as palliative to
Mm,
cushion the effect of the fuel subsidy removal. But then, how should it be used? It is very, very important. In fact,
but
that
first and
is
foremost, before you share on how it should be used, don't you think that the president just put the cart before the horse? Because they removed fuel subsidy before thinking of what to do to cushion it for Nigerians.
I think the president was just wanted to, rip off the band-aid.
Mm.
There's been so much talk about removing fuel subsidy,
Yes,
and
so
when
many.
you open the table for discussion, or negotiation, if I may
Mm,
put it more correctly, for stakeholders' input. A lot of the
mm,
discussions and negotiations have been centered around the fact that there are no necessary measures on ground And this, meanwhile, this fuel subsidy, which are giving more room for corruption, and then getting a few number of people enriched at the expense of Nigeria. Nigeria is building up its debts while a few people are benefiting from fair subsidy corruption that surrounds that. So the president just felt that if I allow those things to be discussions to be had on this, it's more likely that at the end of the day, he would have succumbed to the pressure that would be mounted. Of course, that doesn't mean that the way in which that announcement came is beneficial, because the impact is growing, actually growing on the common masses. And the World Bank, the multilateral agencies are looking at that as many as 122 million more Nigerians are going to be are being swung into extreme poverty as a result of this way that the subsidy was removed.
Thank you so much. Now, one thing that is also not clear is that the federal government also announced that during the before within this period of fuel subsidy removal, that they have actually gained or saved 400 billion naira. And now you are not just saying that the president went to borrow 500 billion naira loan. It's not clear. You told Nigerians that you've been able to save 400 billion naira, and now we are having to go to the National Assembly to actually ask for 500 billion naira. I mean, there's a disparity.
Yes,
between
there's
that.
actually a disparity, and this boils down to the lack of transparency,
Yes.
the opacity that has clouded
Oil and gas sector.
the subsidy regime, the oil and gas sector in general, and then the subsidy regime in particular. Nigerians have not been made to understand how this works. NNPC, if you recall, NNPC claims that the federal government is owing it as much as 2.5 trillion naira from payment of subsidies, and now the NNPC group CEO has also said that Nigeria saves as much as 400 billion naira daily from fuel subsidy. So you are very right to ask that if this is so, is there a need for Nigeria for the president to approach the National Assembly to borrow? However, from my own little understanding, being someone who reports that sector, yeah, well, yeah. So what has been happening is that this NNPC has not been paying physical cash in terms of subsidy to oil marketers. What has before now, the scenario was that the NNPC was the sole importer and taking and also the sole recipient of proceeds of crude oil sales. The NNPC receives the proceeds for crude oil sales on behalf of the federation, now the federal government and the states and local governments. So the NNPC should ordinarily remit this proceed to the federation account to be shared. And then on the other hand, the NNPC will now buy petrol to be distributed around the country for consumption. So on one hand, it collects revenues for the sale of crude oil and other components. And on the other hand, it imports petrol for domestic use. And so what he's saying here now is that there has not been a balance between the oil revenue generated and what it has been spending to buy to import petrol for domestic use. So what is the amount that NNPC claims Nigeria is owing it now is the difference between the crude oil sale receipts, revenues received from the sale of crude oil, and amount spent in importing petrol. So the NNPC claims there has been a deficit. So it's not as if they've been getting physical cash from fuel subsidy, and now that they are no longer there's no fuel subsidy, they are now getting it back. It's just that they are not spending that extra in importing the fuel into the country.
Right. We want to go on a break now. When we come back, there's still so much to look at, and especially in the opaque city, as an insect puts it, in NNPC's activities. Don't go away, just stay tuned.
For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.
Money Radio, discussing the business of making and spending money.
Yes, you're welcome back. In case you're just joining us, this is Energy Sector on Money Radio. It's reaching you on Leadership Television. My name is Winifred Ugbebo, your host on the program. And of course, I always have my in-house analyst. She's also a stakeholder in the energy sector. She's the group business editor of Leadership. Inse, welcome once again.
Thank you.
Yeah, just before we go, of course, we are not losing track of today's topic for discussion, which is IPMAN's request for loan to have more gas stations. But just before we go, because we were talking about the subsidy palliative loan palliative that President Tinubu actually went to National Assembly to procure. Now we are looking at PIA, Petroleum Industry Act, is now actually in full force, given the fact that fuel subsidy has been removed. So, but what about the activities of NNPC? Soon, he says he wants to go public by selling shares to the public. So, would that make the activities of NNPC transparent?
Yeah, don't forget that in line with the PIA, NNPC, as we know it now, is no longer a corporation, but a company limited, a limited liability company that is registered with the Companies and Allied Matters Act. So it's already more or less a commercialized company, even though it's still right now fully owned by the federal government. And though it plans to issue its shares to the public. The issuing of shares will actually make it more transparent. And I know, because of the role that the NNPC played in the past as a regulator of the oil and gas sector, it's still a bit difficult for Nigerians to divulge themselves of the fact that NNPC has moved from a regulator to an operator. So all of its activities as a regulator has been transferred to two regulatory agencies, which are one for the upstream, the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, and the other for the midstream and the downstream, which is the Nigerian Midstream Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority.
You're really a stakeholder, but it's quite a handful.
Yeah,
I was actually holding my breath when you were
authority. So those are the agencies that are now responsible for regulating the activities of the upstream and downstream and midstream sectors of the oil and gas industry. The NNPC now is out to operate as a company like any other like any other private operator within the system. Though now it is a national oil company, in that it is still 100% owned by the federal government. But soon, as they have said, its shares will be offered to the public, which will open it up for more scrutiny. And it is hoped that when that is done, a lot of this its opacity will be opened up, and there will be much more transparency to their operations.
Hopefully, we
Yes.
are keeping our fingers crossed. Don't forget that as a company this time around, it's expected to make profits.
Yeah.
Shareholders will also benefit from the profits and even be added more shares, as the case may be. So let's not lose track of what today's topic is all about. IPMAN's proposal to have more to build gas dispensing stations. So
Yes, based on their agreement, already 7 banks, according to IPMAN, have already lined up to begin dispensing of the revolving loan from the African Development Bank. So that means that the discussions have progressed very far, that we'll begin to see this happen. However, one thing I want to talk about is the impact on pricing for the Nigerians. For while it is very, very economical, the price of gas is more economical compared to the price of petrol, and petrol and diesel. Right now, 1 cubic meter of gas will sell for between 100 naira, according to the IPMAN's projection, between 100 naira and 120 naira.
That's 1 cubic.
Yes. What I would say, the equivalent of 1 liter of petrol or diesel.
It's 100.
So yes, while
yes, 540,
yes, so that shows the
gap
is much. That seems we are seeing over as much as 70% reduction in price. Although the usage differs, we would see where gas, where petrol, what you can use a liter of petrol for, you will need like 1.5 cubic meter of gas to achieve. So, but relatively, you still find that it is much cheaper. However, where the issue would come in for the average fuel user is not in switching from
petrol powered engines to
or diesel powered engine to gas. But the problem now is the pricing, how much it costs. Right now, to the average price to change from petrol to to convert from gas to petrol to gas is around 300,000.
I thought somebody told me 450.
Yeah, okay, to purchase the kit with the dollar at the rate it is now. So everything put together, the purchase of the kit as well as the conversion and everything could take up to 400,000 naira. So how will the average Nigerian afford that? That is the main issue. How would the average Nigerian cough out the as much as 400,000 to convert his or her engine from petrol to gas, bearing in mind that disposable income has shrunk a lot in the face of inflation and every other rising cost within the economy. So that is the issue where stakeholders are of the opinion that government should be able to come in. You raised the question of how the planned money, that the 500 million, that the billion that the
being
proposed as palliative should be used. Stakeholders are like, rather than give out this money, distribute this monies. First and foremost, Nigeria does not have a very good database. Who are the people that will get this monies? How will the government ensure that those who should actually get these monies are the ones that they are being given? And then look at it,
that it doesn't
end up in the coffers of the elite who have been
politicians
and aides and so on and cronies, and not the real people who need this. And then how long will you be able to sustain giving out this palliative? Imagine the number of, they have targeted 50 million Nigerians. Even if, how long will you, if you are giving out 5,000, is it once a month? Is it a once and for all money to give out? How sustainable is it? And before you know it, everything will go down to, everything will just return to how it were, and the suffering continues.
But in your views, how best is it to actually do this palliative of a thing?
We have we are talking about,
many are proposing procuring transportation, like buses.
Of course, procuring transportation is one of it. However, you know that it may still not benefit a lot of every Nigerian within that class. Some people will still want to use their own vehicles. But
of course, if I'm a GP, you don't expect the palliative to go to those that already have vehicles. At least those that have vehicles are not the ones that they target poor.
Oh, so you're saying that you, for instance, now the
palliative,
no, not the palliative, now that the fuel, the removal of fuel subsidy is not impacting on you.
Of course, it's impacting on me.
Of course,
they are looking at those that
exactly, that's exactly what we are saying.
NBC said, 133 million people in multi-dimensional poverty.
Of course, this one's the public transport.
If I may also add again, like when I put myself in that category, I remember my board member said, "No, how can you say you are among those that should be giving palliatives?"
We are not talking of palliative to these people. There are still those in the lower class who have vehicles that, in fact, if you value the vehicles, some of those vehicles, if not for the devaluation of Nigeria's exchange rate, you know that before now there are vehicles that cost 400,000 before the naira got so devalued that those vehicles went as much as over a million. You know what we're talking about. Before now, many could buy vehicles with 750,000 naira, 1 million. But that is no longer the case. Okay, those people who are using those vehicles, do you think that they are, because they are using those vehicles, they are not poor?
That remains a
topic. So that remains a topic. So one way of utilizing this palliative could also be to subsidize the conversion of those kind of vehicles from petrol to gas, so that it will consider from diesel. Most of those kind of vehicles don't use diesel. So they were mainly petrol. So it will greatly reduce their cost of fuel, and ultimately impact on every other cost that they incur.
All right, thank you so much. Well, viewers, you've heard it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And this is where we draw the curtain on today's energy sector program on Money Radio. Till we come your way again, same time next week. I remain Winifred Webo. Bye.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.